Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. No product reviews, but rather we're going to be talking about shotguns. Specifically, shotguns in the context of home defense. Before I kick the video off, I want to go ahead and make a few disclaimers. Number one, I am not a tactical guru. I'm not a firearms instructor. I'm not a former team guy. I'm nobody special. I'm just your average, everyday gun guy, hence the name of my channel. Ultimately, this is my opinion, but it's an opinion that I'm basing off of people who are far more seasoned, far more experienced than me, and what they have to report on this subject. So, shotguns as home defense tools. What do I think about them? Let's talk about it. So before we get too far along here, I want to make one thing clear, and that is I don't hate or I don't dislike shotguns. I mean, I've got one right here. But rather, I think there are some drawbacks or some considerations you should make, as well as some common misconceptions and myths that I would like to address before you go ahead and make that purchase decision. If you're in the market for a home defense weapon and you're considering a shotgun, these are some things that I think you should possibly consider before you make that call. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about some common myths and misconceptions that are typically thrown around with shotguns. Myth number one is that you don't need to aim a shotgun. This one bothers me for a couple of reasons. Number one, because it's not true. This is going to vary, obviously, depending on payload and barrel length and choke, things of that nature. But generally speaking, most people are going to be running something like this, 12 gauge shotgun, and the most common defensive payload being a double-aught buck. Generally, the average spread of double-aught buck is about 1 inch per meter. And that is not going to negate or get rid of the need for applying judicious marksmanship. You absolutely do need to aim a shotgun. The spread is not so wide to where all you have to do is point the gun in the general direction and pull the trigger, and you're gonna win. My other big problem I have with this myth or this misconception is that in my mind, or in my opinion, it perpetuates a pretty bad mindset. If you're of the mindset that all you have to do is pick this thing up and it's going to do the work for you, no matter what platform you choose, let it be a shotgun or a pistol or a rifle, I'd say you're already getting off on the wrong foot. Remember, at the end of the day, you're accountable for every round that leaves your weapon, including those that find their mark and those that don't. So if you're not willing to put the time in to get proficient and to be able to get effective rounds on target without relying on a platform to do it for you, I would say you should probably reconsider your perspective. Myth number two is that if I do this, it's going to scare the bad guy away, and that he's just going to run away as soon as he hears the sound of a shotgun racking. And my response to that is that, well, maybe. That may or may not happen, but I personally don't want to bank my home defense and my self-defense on maybe. The fact is, you should be prepared for the exact opposite of something like that to happen. I don't think anything really good ever has come out of underestimating your opponent, and you got to think about it this way. If somebody has made a lifestyle or a livelihood out of breaking into people's homes and victimizing other people with crime, is it likely that you're the first person in their life who's ever threatened them with violence? I'm inclined to say that's statistically pretty unlikely. So, am I saying that it's necessarily a bad tactic and that you shouldn't ever do it? No. But I wouldn't necessarily bank on your opponent being a coward or running away just because he hears this sound. So, just something to consider. If that is something that you've heard, I wouldn't index too hard on that. Myth number three would be that shotguns are easy to operate. Now, I think there's a pretty big difference between simple and easy. A shotgun, at face value, it is simple. All you got to do is rack it and pull the trigger. But let's not conflate simple with easy. There have been a lot of use of force instructors, people who are far more seasoned, far more experienced than I will ever be, and they have reported that students who have come to their classes and tried to run pump-action shotguns in home defense type scenarios actually have a tendency to short stroke the pump here under any kind of stress, which obviously incites a malfunction. So The idea that a pump action shotgun is simple to operate under any kind of pressure or any kind of stress, the results, I should say, kind of speak otherwise. People have a tendency to make these things not work when they need to, i.e. in the context of somebody trying to hurt them or trying to kill them. So if you're buying a shotgun because you're being told that it's easy to operate and you'll be able to do so under stress, no problem, just know that the data out there doesn't necessarily support those claims. So those myths, I feel like we need to address right out of the gate, that you don't need to aim. Not true. Shotguns are easy to operate. Not necessarily true either. And if you rack the pump on your shotgun, you'll somehow make the bad guy run away, and there won't even be a need for a fight. And again, to that I say that may or may not happen, but do you really want to bank your self-defense and your self-preservation off of maybe? That's up for you to decide. I personally don't think it's a good idea, but if you're willing to take that chance, then God be with you. So myths out of the way, let's now go ahead and talk about some of the real concessions and some of the real drawbacks that you're going to have to take into consideration if you do choose to run one of these things as your home defense tool of choice. The most significant drawback that I can think of when it comes to a shotgun is capacity. Generally speaking, shotguns are going to hold anywhere between 5 to 7 rounds. Yes, you can ghost load, and there's other tricks out there that can potentially get you an extra round in. But if you compare that capacity of 5 to 7 rounds with something like a 30-round capacity on an AR, depending on what kind of state you live in, obviously, or a 17-round capacity with like a 9mm full-size pistol, right out of the gate, you're starting off with a pretty significant disadvantage when it comes to ammunition capacity. And that leads me to my next point, in that the reloading process for a shotgun is a lot more cumbersome, it's a lot more manual, and it's a lot more difficult, I should say, or it's going to require more training to become proficient than, let's say, putting a magazine into a semi-automatic pistol or rifle. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm not saying that it's impossible or that you shouldn't do it, but just know that it's going to take a significant, or more significant, in my opinion, investment of time and training to become proficient at reloading a shotgun fluidly than you would need to with other platforms out there. So the two main disadvantages, I would say, when it comes to shotguns have to do with their capacity along with their reloading process. And lastly, I would say that recoil. Recoil is a thing. 12 gauge recoil is a thing. Is it the most unacceptably bad or poor recoil impulse? No. There's children out there who can handle 12 gauge shotguns no problem, but recoil on a shotgun is more significant than on something like a rifle or a handgun, depending on caliber, of course. But so I would say those are 3 pretty big stipulations or pretty big considerations you're going to have to make if you do choose to run a shotgun for home defense purposes. So we talked about some of the myths. We've talked about some of the drawbacks you're going to have to deal with. Now let's go ahead and talk about some positive things regarding shotguns. Number one, I would have to say that the payload choice, double-aught buck or slugs, typically going to be your more common choices for defensive rounds. The amount of devastation that they can inflict from a terminal ballistic standpoint is pretty significant. Assuming you can get accurate, good rounds or hits on target, it's pretty undeniable the efficacy that a 12 gauge can have on a target. Secondly, pump action shotguns especially are going to be widely available. They're generally not too restricted from state to state, and you're also probably going to be able to find parts and ammunition relatively easily as well. So the availability of shotguns and the applicability across the states, depending on, like I said, what state you live in, it's a hugely attractive feature for a shotgun. And I would also say that the price efficiency of shotguns is definitely something to consider as well. I mean, you can get something like a Maverick 88 for sometimes around $200 to $300. You're not going to be able to get a quality AR-15 in that price range, but you can get something like that Maverick, and it's going to run great for $200 to $300. That's an immense value right there. So overall, I think that shotguns do have some significant advantages, presuming that you put the investment of time and effort and energy to be able to run them effectively. In my opinion, is it going to take longer to get there than with something like an AR or a handgun? Probably. But that's up to you to decide. So overall, what are my thoughts on shotguns as home defense tools? I think they can be great. There's a ton of advantages, there's a ton of good things that shotguns do have to offer in the context of home defense. However, just like anything, they require a significant degree of practice and training to get proficient with. And there are some shotgun-specific quirks and training points that you're going to have to work out as well if you do choose to run one of these things for your home defense tool of choice. So that is going to be today's video, guys. Hope you guys found it informative. If you've been around for some time and you know guns, you probably didn't hear anything that you didn't already know. But if you're new or if you're exploring options for your first home defense tool, I hope you found this video to be informative. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Shotguns as home defense tools, yes or no? And if a yes, let me know why. If it's a no, let me know why as well. I would love to know your guys' thoughts on your choice and your thoughts on the matter. Looking forward to pumping out more content for you guys real soon, but until then, we'll see you next time.